Taoiseach, I think that remark was entirely unbecoming of you, if I might say so. I think your approach on this issue has sometimes been found wanting. Every single time that Sinn Féin have tried to secure an initiative from government, we have liaised with government. On the contrary, your approach is to announce at 12 o'clock through media sources that you're going to bring forward a motion and then give it to members of the opposition at the very last minute with about a 20-minute window to make amendments. That's not a government that's actually seeking to work in partnership with the rest of the House. You've had enough time. You've had 20 minutes, and I'm going to actually outline what I believe is a very unfair characterisation of you by genuine attempts of members of this House to ensure that Ireland takes a stand and that Ireland shows leadership in defence of international law, in defence of international humanitarian law and in defence of the UN Charter. Because the question that people are asking now, quite rightly, is how many more? How many more debates do we need to have? How many more statements do we need to have? How many more motions do we need to bring before this House? And more importantly, how many more Palestinians need to be murdered? Because currently we're at over 25,000. That's essentially 1% of the entire population of Gaza. How many more women and children? Because they make up 70% of that number. In fact, children make up over 10,000 of those that Israel has murdered. How many more healthcare professionals have to be killed doing their job in Gaza? Because currently the figure stands at almost 340. How many journalists telling the world what is actually happening have to be murdered by Israel? Because currently the number stands at about 120. How many more people have to be displaced? Because currently we're talking about over 2 million people, virtually the entire population of Gaza. How many more hospitals have to be attacked? Because now it stands at every single hospital in Gaza. Just 15 out of the 36 hospitals that were in Gaza are actually even partially functioning. How many more buildings in Gaza need to be destroyed? Because it's about 50% at this stage. And how many Palestinian people in Gaza are actually going to be forced to starve to death or to die of entirely preventable diseases before we match what are welcome strong words with strong actions? Because we have had strong words, and I've commended you, I've commended the Taoiseach, I've commended other government ministers when those strong words have been uttered. But don't pretend that those strong words have just come naturally, because it took quite a number of days into this conflict before the word ceasefire was agreed by you in terms of a motion before this House. It took even longer before the words "we condemn Israel for its actions" were agreed by you. And in respect of the ICJ, and you've used the words misleading on quite a number of occasions to describe the approach of opposition, can I remind you that on the 7th of June, when on Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar was asked directly, will Ireland support the ICJ case being brought by South Africa? His answer was no, we do not intend to do so. So I welcome the fact that government have moved on all of those issues, but don't pretend you haven't. And don't pretend that it isn't as a result of the members of this House trying to proactively bring government to a point where we actually take action. Because we haven't got to that point yet, Taoiseach. And I don't believe that that is sufficient. In fact, every single proposition that is brought before you, there are reasons not to do it. In terms of the ICC case, we're not going to do it. We'll throw a little bit of money at it, despite the fact that you know that the ICC prosecutor is dragging their heels in respect of this issue, and what they need in order to be brought to heel and to actually advance that, they need states to join the ICC referral. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And if you want to look at when we've talked about adopting measures that this House has already approved of, the Occupied Territories Bill, there's an excuse not to do it. The illegal Israeli settlements divestment bill sitting on the floor of this House, you delayed it. You could release that in the morning straight away. Let's take a substantive measure recognising the state of Palestine, something that this House and the upper House have called for. Your programme for government includes it. There's excuses. Others aren't ready to join, so we'll wait. In respect of all of the measures that have been brought forward in terms of diplomatic, economic, financial, trade, anything that would send a message to Israel that they will pay a price for what they are doing, there's an excuse not to do it. There's another way of doing things. There's another way of doing things, because your argument is that if we take any of these measures, there's a risk of Ireland becoming isolated. That's the term you have used. I would challenge anybody to suggest to me that South Africa is isolated in the world right now, because far from it, they are seen as world leaders in defence of international law. And our request to you, and our amendment to this motion, which I hope you will support, sets out that Ireland is sending a message to the world that we want to become world leaders too, because we will not stand over what Israel is doing in Palestine with the approval or the authorisation, essentially, of the international community, because the international community has yet to say stop. We want you, Taoiseach, on our behalf, to say loudly and clearly that the Irish people say stop. Stad anish.